guys. Let's lock in a little bit. How's everybody doing? Good. I heard we had a real good morning in here this morning. I missed it, but we're in for a treat this afternoon. Today we got Noah Sanders who's going to share with y'all about faith and agriculture, and he's got roots coming from Africa in his agricultural concepts and roots from the Bible, and he just has a great heart to serve, and I'm really excited for what he's going to bring today. I want to let y'all know that if the Lord stirs up anything in your heart today, or if anything is stirring, wheels are turning, I have a sign-up sheet on the back table. If you would, just let me get your name, and I will be in contact with you, and we will go down this road together. If you're not interested, that's fine. But if you've got something going on, please leave your name back there by Andrew's table on that. And I'm going to follow up with you, and we'll go down this road, okay? If y'all would, put your phones away, your headphones off. Just give this man respect, right? And I look forward to hearing it myself. Thank y'all.
Woo! I am very excited to be here with you guys. Can we pray? Lord, what a privilege to be able to come and gather and be able to talk about your incredible creation, the amazing role that we have to steward it and make it abundant and fruitful, to recognize the fallen world and our own sinfulness and inability to do that without your work in our lives and heart, and yet the hope and excitement we have to be a part of your redemption, not only in our own lives and hearts, but in the land, and the ability to feed people and bring health and hope to our communities, Lord. And I pray that you would just give me the words to say today, to share a bit of what you've done in my life, and to inspire others with what you can do in theirs. Lord, we need a new generation of people to stand up for God, to stand up for the power of Jesus, and to take that into the practical things that the practical needs that we have in our communities, Lord. And food is such an important thing that impacts our lives every day. It's such a gift from you, and yet it's so corrupted oftentimes by the world today. And we just ask that you would show us your way, because we know that your ways are better. And we just ask for that humility to respect your design in creation, and to just trust your provision to just abundantly provide everything that we need, and that you would give us the joy of participating in in caring for this amazing creation that you've given us, Lord God. And we just thank you so much for this opportunity today. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. All right, guys, so how many of you have ever planted or grown any plant or seed or anything like that? Oh, wow, awesome. How many of you have ever had any challenges when you did that? Did it go perfectly? Yeah, a few challenges, right? I had a farmer friend of mine who he's been gardening way longer than I've been alive, and he would call me up and be like, Noah, let me ask you about how you grow your beans. How far apart do you plant them? And I love that about farming and agriculture, is it keeps us humble in a way that we recognize that we don't know everything, right? There's a lot of things in life like that. And today, one of the things that I want to do is just kind of share a bit of my journey in of learning how to look at our role as stewards of creation, and the journey of inviting God into changing my perspective with that, and in the excitement of seeing him provide so many amazing solutions and things that we've been able to bring to people around the world, and that I've learned and I'm trying to bring back from some of my mentors in Africa. So is agriculture important?
Yes. Very.
Why?
Food.
Yes, food, right? How many times do we eat typically a day?
3 to 5.
3 to 5 probably, unless you're a hobbit, right? Then you eat a lot more times than that. At my house, we talk about has anybody watched The Lord of the Rings? The hobbits, they eat this, they have this beautiful, it's kind of like this English countryside stuff, but they love their food, and their food is not junk food. It's, potatoes and cabbages and and cheeses and stuff. So we talk in our family, we're not just eating healthy food, we like to eat hobbit food. So we grow hobbit food. But it is so important to have farmers. Can you have a farm without a farmer? Not. I mean, today we're trying to with technology, but at the end of the day, creation requires a relationship. And this is what I hope that some of you guys will go away. Not all of us are going to be farmers, but we should all appreciate agriculture and be able to participate in agriculture, both as a consumer and producers and people who are in a community that recognizes the importance of food. And we'll get into more of that today. But I want to talk about it particularly today about the importance and opportunity of faith-based agriculture. So a little bit about me. This is my beautiful wife, Dorothy. I am a disciple of Jesus, a husband, a father, a farmer, homesteader. I also have written a few books and love teaching people. And then I work with this organization out of Africa called Foundations for Farming. And I live about 48 minutes from here, up towards Silicotta and Alexander City. If I can get this. There, that's my family. I have 8 kids, so one of them is born, and she is still not quite born in this picture earlier. But I have 6 sons and 2 daughters, and we love working together on our farm and homestead. You know, agriculture today has become so much of just a factory business at times. You know, it's not something that you're like, I would love to do that. And yet, throughout history, the resiliency of farming has been that families loved doing it. It's something that God's put in us, that we don't just want the money out of it, we want the lifestyle, because it has to do with family and food and creation and work and all those things. So that's a big part of why I got into farming at the beginning. This is our homestead. We live actually off-grid. We have solar power. We do produce a lot of things for ourselves, our food. We make our own compost together. We have, that's our hobbit garden there, right by our house, with our beautiful little wattle fence. And the kids help with growing their own little garden plots. But we do it very low tech. You know, you can take, what we focus on teaching people are principles that apply whether you're doing it with sticks and string or you're doing it with AI and amazing technology. But if you don't learn it in simple form, it's not easy to understand the concepts, and we're really passionate about equipping people that have very few resources with the ability to feed themselves. So a lot of people say, well, how can poor people afford healthy food nowadays? Well, did you know that historically, it was only rich people that could afford to pay other people to grow food for them? Historically, people that were the poor, or those who didn't have as much as other people, they were able to subsist by growing food for themselves. And we want to have technologies and principles of agriculture that produce abundantly, but people can be faithful with what they have around them. This is some corn that we're growing. We have our own grits. In fact, my son Patrick here was grinding grits earlier today to restock our supply of grits for the family. Does anybody here like grits? Okay, you haven't had my wife's grits then, so you'll have to come over to our house and try our grits. And if I was really from the South, it would be what? Grits. 2 syllables. Let's see here. You may have to advance those slides for me if this is not one. Go back just a little bit. Okay, so here's some of the things that we grow. Next slide. And then we've worked as well with some after-school programs locally, being able to teach some of the stuff that we've learned. So that's a little bit what we do right now. Is we grow our own food, and then we take time to teach other people. But we've shared a little bit about our journey, because it hasn't always been that case. We were running a business for a time there. You can go ahead and let's see if I can get this. Oh, Lord, there we go. Okay, yay, thank you, Lord. Try to stay right here. Okay, so a little bit of the session overview. I want to discuss the importance of agriculture, share some of my story, and challenge you on how you can make a positive impact on agriculture in the future. The topic I kind of want to consider is, can agriculture provide both profit and viability today? Can you actually make a living farming? Is it worth it to grow a little bit of food for yourself? And is it valuable? Is it something that we should spend our lives on, especially as we think about the Lord and our responsibility to give our lives to Him, we don't want to spend our time on anything that He doesn't care about. But I think He cares about agriculture, and it can really provide eternal benefits. So some of the reasons I care about this topic of whether farming is something worth doing is because farming was the first job God gave people, right? He didn't put them in a city, He put them in a garden to care for and work in the Garden of Eden. It's essential to freedom. Do you know that there's a lot of people around the world today that have very little freedom because somebody else controls the food? And if somebody controls your food supply, then if they don't have good intentions, then they're able to control you and have power over you. You know, the American colonies would not have been able to separate from Great Britain. Even if George Washington and all the battles won, if they had not had the farmers growing food that allowed them to separate from what Great Britain was shipping to them. So it was a joint effort. Agriculture was important. It's important that we come up with profitable farming methods that can be sustained and ones that are eternally valuable. And you should care, even if you aren't a farmer or aren't interested in agriculture, because, like we said, we all eat, and we've got to be faithful with the first thing entrusted to us economically. So maybe, like I love aviation and flight, but if somebody doesn't grow food for you to eat before you go to fly, how much freedom are you going to have to invest in aviation? None, right? It's like the very basics of economics we have to be faithful with first because it affects every other enterprise that we can try to be involved in. I'm excited to be here at this school because the founder, Lyman Ward, actually, a big part of his vision for this place was equipping young people with skills in agriculture because he understood how important it was for the health of communities. And if you can look at this map here, this is the map of the place. I'm not sure what year it comes from. We got it from the archives, but you can see on here there are rotating crops, and orchards, and pecans, and gardens, and fields, and pastures, and look at that, they planted 20 acres of kudzu. I wonder where all the kudzu comes from. And so all this land was being utilized to produce food for the school and to sell, and so that was a big part of the vision for this school originally. And I really feel like agriculture is one of these noble callings that God's really given us. You know, it's an ancient calling of man. It's the foundation of any nation who wants to remain free, healthy, and connected to God. These are my boys. We're having fun breaking up some loose hay at a neighbor's house for our gardens. They were pretending dressing up like hobbits there. And then this is actually a picture of from this school here, from back in the day when hay was collected from some of the fields out there on the land. Here's a quote from President George Washington. He said, "I know of no pursuit in which more real and important services can be rendered to any country than by improving its agriculture, its breed of useful animals, and other branches of a husbandman's cares." You know, husbandman is somebody who cares for the land and animals. We also have George Washington himself, right? One of the greatest military leaders in American history, who said, "I would rather be on my farm than the emperor of the world." Just because you farm or you garden a bit or you're engaged in agriculture doesn't mean that you don't do anything else. Some of the greatest figures of history also were passionate about agriculture, and some of the things that they learned in that aspect of their life spilled over into their ability to be leaders in other areas of culture. Thomas Jefferson said, "The cultivators of the earth are the most valuable citizens. They're the most vigorous, independent, virtuous, and they're tied to their country and wedded to its liberty and interests by the most lasting bands." And then Booker T. Washington, who was a friend of Lyman Ward, said, "There is as much dignity in tilling a field as in writing a poem." And he was dealing in a day and age where, after the Civil War, agriculture and work like that was considered slave work. And the former slaves didn't want to do it, and the people that had owned the slaves didn't want to do it, and it was something that they had to rediscover the dignity and calling that God has given to work that's manual, that is with our hands. You know, the Bible talks about we're the work of God's hands. And I think it brings some special pleasure when we do something with our hands, right? And then George Washington Carver, in talking to farmers, he said, it requires the highest intelligence and the highest type of intelligence to be a farmer. For he who would be a farmer must understand and must acquire the mastery over all the puzzling forces of nature. Now, some of the things that attracts me and other people to agriculture is enjoyable work, fresh food, working as a family, the beautiful workplace, like my office there, and the God-given itch to grow things that we get every spring. So my farming journey, I got into when I was younger. My dad, I have some of our families from Indiana. We had some farmers in my ancestors, but the farm had been sold by the time we got to my dad's generation. So I got interested and had to kind of start from scratch. My dad bought some land, and we kind of went together to develop it. And in 2009, I started an operation where we were growing a diversity of products, all naturally, and selling them directly to the people that were eating it, which was really a big part of what I wanted to do. I wanted our farm to be a way to connect with and serve people directly. And I didn't want to have to compete with the wholesale market either. So these were some of our laying hens. This was the farmer's market in Birmingham where we sold, Pepper Place Farmer's Market. And then you get to do things like ride pigs when they get out, watch my younger brother, or play with turkeys. And I got to work with my wife, and it was just a blessing to be able to get up each day and work as a family. You know, one of the neat things about agriculture is you can, whether you're 90 or you're 2, there's something that you can participate in and work. Whereas when I was growing up, my dad was in computer software, which is great. I love that, but it wasn't something that we could necessarily do as a family. So these are some of the things that we delivered to our local community. And maybe you don't like vegetables, but it's amazing. Those vegetables are grown without any chemical fertilizers, any sprays. And the nutrition in them is just amazing. And our customers love them. And they bought them from us because they recognize not only the connection with the farmer, but the quality of it, that they were trying to invest in their health, so they didn't have to invest as much in medicine later on because of poor health. But we still had a lot to learn, and one of the things that I became aware of as I got into agriculture is not everybody is in agreement on how to farm. So if you ask, what's the best way to raise a chicken, or what's the best way to raise a tomato, if you look that up on YouTube, how many answers are you going to get? A lot, correct? I used to do blacksmithing. There wasn't much controversy on how to make a nail when you blacksmith. But there's a lot of controversy on how to grow plants. And I realized that there was a lot more of worldview, your principles, what you believe has an impact on the management of living things. And you can kind of oversimplify it to these two different extreme worldviews you see in this day. One is extreme industrial agriculture, which is really what I saw a lot in Auburn when I grew up there, which is very productive, but questionably sustainable at times. And on the other hand, all these very extreme environmental agriculture, which was very sustainable, but very questionably productive at times, to produce stuff. And I really realized that at the root of both of those, there was a worldview issue. One, elevated man as having all the answers through science, and the other, elevated nature as having all the answers. And of course, there's truths in both, but if you look at what God actually calls us to, and God actually cares about how we farm, not just whether we farm, but how we farm. Look at this verse from Isaiah. It says, it's talking about when a farmer plows, does he keep on plowing forever? Does he break up and harrow it forever? And he said, no, his God instructs him and teaches him the right way. All this comes from the Lord Almighty, wonderful in counsel and magnificent in wisdom. Do you think God is interested in giving us answers to practical problems that we have? No? I think he does. It's like, well, he gives us what we need, but he also wants us to have a relationship. There's this verse in Proverbs that says, trust in the Lord with all your ways and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he will direct your paths. And that original word, acknowledge, actually means to seek to know him. So this idea of as I'm going to gardening, I want to say, how can I learn more about who the Creator is so that I can use and reflect him in the way that I do that? So it's not just like a divine, a lazy download. I agree with you. It's not like, okay, well, just tell me the answer and we don't have to work, right? But it's in the pursuit of him that he begins to show us how to approach that solution. So, that's great. But here you can see he wants to help teach us. He's not going to not make us work for it, but he does want to teach us. And he told us in the beginning, like Adam, to care for and work the land. If you think care has to do with sustainability, working it has to do with productivity. So this is to be a good steward, we actually have to balance both. We're working the land, we're taking care of it. And that's really takes humility to know how to do that well. And part of my journey in trying to figure out what does that look like on my farm, that's why I wrote this book, Born Again Dirt, asking the question of, if I acknowledge God as the creator, and that he has all the wisdom, and that he's given me the responsibility to use my life to serve other people to glorify him, how would that impact the way I raise chickens, or approach the soil, or ran a farm business? And it's not like I have all the answers, but we at least should ask the question, because we don't want to be unknowingly adopting methods that reflect a worldview that's counter to the values that I hold, which is sometimes what we end up doing. One of the things we have to recognize, my ministry that my family and I run is called Redeeming the Dirt. And the idea is that agriculture has brokenness that needs addressing. We can't just expect to have the Garden of Eden. Romans says, for the creation was subjected to frustration, not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in the hope that the creation itself will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the freedom and glory of the children of God. So there's challenges facing agriculture today. We have amazing, in the U.S., we have food on the grocery store shelves almost every time we go there, right? But some of the challenges that we face is, let's say on the home production side of agriculture, not the business side. How many gardens do you see in the springtime when you drive around, even in the country? A little bit, a few here and there. It's not like everybody has a garden anymore like they used to. People think it's cool, but then you plant it and then it gets very hot outside, and then it's a lot easier to go buy at the store, correct? So the skill of growing food has been lost in a large degree, and because of that, when people try to get back in it and they're excited, they have unrealistic expectations about how much it takes to grow it. They can go back one minute. Let's see. Okay. Challenges for commercial agriculture. Farming as a whole, commercially, is not very profitable. Over 90% of farm households in the U.S. only make 10% of their income from the farm. The rest is from off-farm jobs. Production sustainability, we're very dependent on inputs from other places. Fertilizer, seed, it's not like they're grown on the farm anymore. They're purchased and shipped from a long ways away. Safety of inputs is questionable today with a lot of the chemicals that we have to use on such a large scale, and it's definitely being linked to health concerns and damage to the land. And then we have a lot of government regulation and intervention in farming that skews some of the economics that normally you pay attention to when you're running a business, like subsidies and regulations. I definitely face that in mine. So this is from the USDA. This shows you for these farm households, their income. Only the little green at the top is how much they make from their farm. So not a lot of profitability in those operations. And then challenges for farmers themselves. The average age of the farmer is 54 and going up. There are very few young people going into farming. And the suicide amongst commercial farmers is higher even than for war veterans. Because when farming is such a legacy, when you're facing the fact of going out of business and losing not only maybe your identity, but also your family legacy, it's hard for farmers to know how to go on. But it just doesn't indicate a lot of health in the sector of agriculture and a need for hope for people coming in with new solutions. Here's the average age of farmer you can see going down over the years, over the decades. Or going up, sorry. The number of young people in agriculture going down. Oops. So what is at the root of all this brokenness in agriculture? When we look at our broken relationship with creation, why are there people starving all around the world? Do you know that in Africa as a continent has a third of all the natural resources in the world? More than any other continent. most arable land, most minerals, and they produce less than 3 to 5% of the world's gross domestic product. It's not a resource. Why are they not prosperous? Why are people starving when there's plenty of food? Half of the food in the world that's grown doesn't get eaten. It's just wasted and thrown away. Well, the root of all this brokenness in agriculture, I would propose, is a result of broken relationships. One way to think about creation is God created in the beginning our relationship with Him, our relationship with ourselves, our identity, who we are, our relationship with others, and our relationship with His creations, His stewards. And when man rejected God's way of doing things, it broke our relationship with God, our relationship with ourselves, resulting in shame. Man and woman hid, broke man's relationship with others, and they were blaming each other. And then it also broke our relationship with creation, which resulted in pain. And so we see all the problems around the world today are just these manifestations of these different broken relationships, and creation, which includes agriculture, is just one of these broken relationships that we have to deal with. And our way to try to fix this, in the extreme industrial is like, mankind and science can fix all the problems. Or over here, nature can save us. But the problem then again is that we can fall into one ditch or the other. It's all about production, and we destroy the land, and we destroy people's health, or it's all about sustainability, and we waste resources by not even utilizing them. So we're ultimately, as farmers, going to have to decide, are we going to just trust ourselves, or as Christians, are we going to trust God? And this is why when we talk about Jesus needs to be the foundation of everything we do, it's because without Jesus there to fix this relationship with God, we can't have these other relationships be fixed. Does that make sense? As long as I've still got pride and unfaithfulness and selfishness motivating me, then it's going to be really hard to go out and be successful in a relationship with the land without just raping it and moving on like people have throughout the centuries. And it's not about a method of just, you just farm this way, it's all be perfect. It's about a relationship, like I was saying. God wants to manifest Himself, not just through the particular way I'm farming, but in the journey that I'm taking as a farmer. Where's my starting point, and how am I progressing to reflect Him better? There. So this takes me to my journey to Africa. Go through this quickly. I had, when I was first getting started, gone from a backyard garden to a large garden and realized I really didn't know what I was doing, so I had a lot of problems with pests and disease and erosion, and realized that I didn't really know as much as I thought I did. So I heard about these guys in Africa had an organization called Foundations for Farming, and when I looked at their crops, they were growing these beautiful crops with just a hoe and just the stuff that they had around them. And yet they were so on fire for the Lord, and they also had such a humble spirit that I was like, these are the guys I want to learn from. And this guy in particular, Brian Oldreive, was the gentleman that kind of started Foundations for Farming. It was his story. He grew up in Zimbabwe. Does anybody know where Zimbabwe is? All right, so if you know where Africa is, the very bottom country is South Africa, and right above that and to the east a little bit is the country of Zimbabwe. It used to be called Rhodesia. And he grew up, he was a very successful tobacco farmer, and then he came to know the Lord, and he was very passionate about serving the Lord with all his heart. The interesting thing was he grew tobacco for thousands and thousands of people, very successful tobacco grower, but he was completely against smoking. He was always telling his kids, don't smoke because it's not good for you. And of course his daughters were like, yeah, Dad, but why do you grow tobacco if you think it's so bad for people to smoke? So one day he was convicted and promised God he would never grow any tobacco again and try to grow food, but then he had these 2 terrible droughts where they lost all this money, and the bank came to him and said, look, if you keep growing tobacco, here's the checkbook. If you don't, you're going to lose it all, and we're going to sell you out. So he had to kind of wrestle with, like, was he going to stick to his convictions and lose everything, or was he going to go back to the easy money? And so he and his wife were unified, and they decided to lose it all, and they ended up being poor for several years. Finally got a job working for another farm that was growing food, working for a widow who was trying to keep it going for her son. Her husband had been killed in the Bush War there. And still, every year they were having these problems with sustainability. Every year the land took longer and longer to prepare, and the costs were going up and the yields were So he eventually came to this point where he was like, I don't have an answer. I need to go. And he tried to get answers for other production methods, and there wasn't. This was the early 80s, late 70s. So he finally came to this point that he just went and said, okay, God, I need your help. Can you show me how to farm? And so he went into creation and just sat down in the woods and said, all right, God, just show me how you grow this stuff. Because over here, my stuff is dying. Over here, it's growing fine without any fertilizers or chemical sprays. When you all think about all the stuff out here, right, where you don't mow, it grows great, doesn't it? In Alabama, we're not doing anything to it. So it's like, what is God doing there that makes it where we don't need fertilizer and weeds and pesticides, herbicides? So he just observed to start with two simple principles. One, there was no deep inversion plowing like he was doing, and there was always a blanket, he called God's blanket on the ground, or mulch. And so he took that in faith and applied it to his garden, to one of his fields. And this is similar to George Washington Carver had a very similar philosophy of thinking about nature as an unlimited broadcasting station to which God will speak to us every hour if we'll just tune in. And quotes from George Washington Carver there. He said, reading about nature is fine, but if a person walks in the woods and listens carefully, he can learn more than what's in books, for they speak with the voice of God. Okay, so they did a trial, actually, of a simulated storm where they had two plots. One was plowed with no mulch on it, like he had been doing. One was not plowed and had mulch on it. And they applied 2.5 inches of rain in 30 minutes on a 4% slope. On the first field that was plowed, 90% of that water ran off. How much percent? 90%. That's almost all of it ran off. And they lost a lot of dirt. Only 10% infiltrated. That means he only registered a 1/4 inch in the water table. And we're going to contrast that with the other plot. There we go. Thanks. Yeah. Where it has the roots all undisturbed there. We have the mulch on top. When they applied the rain there, how much do you think ran off? What percentage? That's good. Yeah. Only 6% and 94% infiltrated. Ryan, I'm just going to do that to you every time, okay? Yeah, you can turn it around and face you. That way we can fly through a little faster. Thank you guys for being patient. I'm just going to put this over here. And so, just that difference, the fact that when they had a rain, 90% infiltrated in the ground, and that when it didn't rain next week, they had water in the ground, right? Whereas before they had it. You can go ahead. And they also didn't have near the runoff erosion with the mulch and the not plowing as well. Here are some examples of their crops. They did corn into straw. And he didn't do the whole farm all at once. What he did is he applied it just on a small piece and eventually increased it to the whole farm over 6 years. You think if he had tried to apply not plowing and mulching on the whole farm all at once, do you think he would have succeeded? No. God says if you're faithful with little, he'll add to you. Keep going. And eventually they were the second largest privately owned farm in Africa. This is some of their crops here. Just keep going through this. So their yield production went up almost double in some of their crops once they started doing this. Their cost decreased from 1/5 of the fuel to 1/4 of the tractors. You can see the crops: wheat, corn, peanuts, more corn, soybeans. You can see the blanket there, God's blanket, and that was sugar cane in there. And then he felt like God said, I want you, this is not just for you, I want you to teach this to the poor. So he began going and teaching these same principles to the poor. And you can see the difference in the conventional fields and the fields where they were taught not to plow. Basically, do it God's way is what he started talking about the method as. And he would say that the genius of God is in his simplicity. And they also taught people management, to do things on time, to a high standard with minimal waste and with joy. Because if you don't manage something well, you can have a good method, but it still won't work. So I was able to go over there, learn from him, came back to my farm, and really wanted to apply this idea of foundations for farming, where the foundation is Jesus Christ. And the way that when you say, well, what does that mean? It's just like a fish sticker on your bumper, a fish bumper sticker on your truck. Well, the way that we practically do that is saying, I want to apply this heart of humility, Jesus' heart of faithfulness and unselfishness. And the way that this practically looks is in humility, we acknowledge God's wisdom, we go to His creation, and we use that to improve the methods of how we're managing His creation, just like Brian did. And then we apply faithfulness by starting with what we have, small, believing God's given us everything that we need, doing it on time to a high standard with minimal waste, and then God's the one that adds the joy when we do things with excellence like that. And then unselfishness, when we're generous to the land, generous to the others, to the poor, that's going to result in God blessing your harvest, blessing your relationships, and a new generation of farmers ultimately. So all these production challenges these challenges we talked about with agriculture of poor profit, no joy, no new farmers, are all really rooted in a heart that we need to have that traces back to something only Jesus can do for us. So, go ahead. So we ended up, we've done some conferences over the years talking about encouraging people to think about these concepts. We had Brian Oldreeve over, that's him on the right there, and he asked us to be the first training station for Foundation for Farming in the U.S. So we've been working on training that over the past 10 years. And one of the things that we've developed when we think about multiplying gardens in our communities, we've developed what we call the Wellwater Garden Project, which is based on something that Brian taught in Africa, which is a simple demonstration garden that can be used to train others in these principles that can be expanded to any other kind of agricultural pursuit. And you can see we use them a lot of with churches, and they're very simple, based on these techniques in Africa, but all based on this humility, faithfulness, and unselfishness. And you see, this is one of the ones that Brian Aldridge had originally in Africa, where rather than going and telling people, this is how you need to farm, you just show them something beautiful and attractive. And when they come and say, how did you do that? Mine's dying over here. Then you teach them. So our vision is to have 1 million well-watered gardens in 10 years, which are these little 20 by 20 gardens, which they can be bigger or smaller, but the intention is to plant them in a way to model these principles and to teach other people to have a heart for the last, the least, and the lost. We've developed kind of some a handbook that we have that you can get free on wellwatergardenproject.org. We actually have planted a lot of these around. This is one of our students put in Birmingham, upstate New York, in Connecticut, in Indiana, in Ohio. She's laying out hers, in Rockford, Alabama, in Toronto, Canada, in a veterans facility in New Jersey. And you can see they're just simple gardens that are put in with using these principles, but they, even just one farmer, he put it in as a flower garden because people weren't interested in food, but it brought so much joy to their community. And so one of the things we do twice a year is we do training for trainers, because one of the things, the vision of the 1 million well-watered gardens in 10 years is, did you know that if I taught you how to plant a well-watered garden with my well-watered garden, and then you taught somebody else, and we each taught 2 people a year, which is not a full-time job, right? You just, 2 people come along, you teach them. In 10 years, you would have 1 million well-watered gardens if you multiplied it that way. So the vision is we can all be a trainer. Keep going quickly through the rest of these. So as you can see, we just use simple sticks and strings to do these really beautiful gardens. And we bring people into our farm for 5 days, and they learn compost making and learn how to connect and teach people, and they go all over the country and the world. And we're also doing it locally in Silicaga with an after-school gardening project where students come in and learn these same principles and are able to grow food for a housing authority there locally in Silicaga. So to wrap up here, I just want to help you all think about the future of food. Food systems today, they work great, but they're very dependent on stable systems and economies and trade, which as we saw, I had friends of mine who they were starving people in Africa because of the war in Ukraine. That should not be happening, right? We should not have them dependent on places outside. So it's important that we think about local food production. People are going to be looking for answers in the future if they need food. And the solutions, there's a whole bunch of solutions coming from the world that says that you can just centralize and make everything blockchain tracked and based, basically in a way that you make it so technology based that it robs people of the freedom to grow their own food. We don't want those to be the only solutions. So I want y'all to think about what ways y'all can participate in growing food in your own communities, in your own backyards, so that you can provide other options. Next slide. So here's a few practical applications, guys, okay? 1, educate yourself about simple, local, healthy food production. Also, for your own self, try to eat God-given food rather than man-made food as much as possible. Like, what would God-given food be? Cheetos? Maybe like carrots, vegetables, meat, eggs, milk, those kind of things. And of course, man-made foods, so they don't look like anything that grows outside. And then commit to grow some of your own food when possible. Possibly plant a well-watered garden, build some compost, and really ask God to help you become a good steward in every area of your life. Because our life doesn't belong to us, it belongs to Him. So my conclusion is, if you learn to steward the land with a heart of humility, faithfulness, and generosity, your leadership will bless your community and glorify God. George Washington Carver said, do what you can with what you have, and do it now. So don't use any excuse to not get started today on anything that God's laying on your heart to do. Resources and contact, you're welcome to ask me any questions afterwards and connect with me later through Ryan. Again, if any of y'all are interested in coming to my farm, getting a little bit of training, learning some of these things, and getting maybe a homemade pizza while you're there. We have a pizza oven that we cook all our food and stuff on the farm. Then, just pray about what God might want from you as far as participating in what He wants to do to bring redemption to this area of food, because there are a lot of battles going on in our world, and food is one of them. And you guys are going to have to be the leaders in the future that make sure that it continues to be free and provide help for our communities. So let me just pray for you guys. Lord, thank you so much for everyone today, for their listening, for their patience, and we just thank you for the fact that you care about us and care about the food and the land. And I pray that you would show us each how to be faithful in our little parts and realms, Lord, and areas of influence to be able to make sure that we are bringing hope and light to the people around us. In Jesus' name, amen. Thanks so much, guys.
Alright guys, that's about as practical as you can get, because I know you guys eat every day, right? It's important what you're eating. So no matter what you're going to do in life, no matter what your career is going to be, where you're going to go, you're going to eat. So pay attention to what you eat. Do it wisely. If you guys, like I said, if you're interested, if you have any questions for Noah, feel free to come up here and ask him a question. Man, he's a giver. He loves to help people. So definitely take advantage of that. And don't forget, there's a sign-up sheet in the back. If you're interested and want to know more, we might take a trip somewhere. Don't know, we're just going to sign up and find out. And